On the day of her wedding, Grace's loyal German shepherd, Hugo, stood firmly in her path as she prepared to walk down the aisle. The guests fell into a hush. For more than a decade, Hugo had been her unwavering shadow, her constant through joy and heartache. She figured he was just nervous, overwhelmed by the crowd and commotion. But what unfolded next would redefine her understanding of love. Grace halted, her gown cascading around her feet as Hugo pressed his body into her legs. He didn't bark, he didn't growl, he only looked up at her, with eyes so intense, they sent a chill straight through her. "Hugo, come on, buddy," she whispered, trying to coax him aside. But he stayed put. Soft murmurs stirred among the guests. Her father reached for Hugo's leash. "Grace, sweetheart, we need to keep moving," he urged. Then came a low, almost imperceptible growl. Even her father froze. Grace's heart dropped. Hugo never growled. Kneeling slowly, her dress pulling around her, she cupped his face in her hands. "What's wrong, boy?" she murmured, running her fingers over his graying muzzle. That's when she noticed it. The trembling in his legs, the shallow rise and fall of his chest. Her breath caught in her throat. Something was very wrong. "Grace," her mother called sharply from the front row, impatience bleeding through. "We're running out of time. What's happening?" But Grace wasn't listening. Her world had shrunk to Hugo, the one who had stood beside her through every moment that truly mattered. She leaned in, her forehead gently resting against his. "I'm here, Hugo," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Helping him sit, she felt his weight sag into her. Guests exchanged confused glances, but Grace was deaf to everything but the sound of his labored breath. Hugo looked up at her, his amber eyes filled with something deeper than pain. A plea, a message only she could hear. "Hugo," she whispered again, voice trembling. From the end of the aisle, her fiancé, Lucas Bennett, stepped forward, concern etched across his face. "Grace, is everything all right?" he asked gently. She looked between Lucas and Hugo, the knees tightening like a knot in her chest. Her father knelt beside her. "Honey, we can't wait much longer. It's time." But the words barely registered. Her mind spun back through the years. Hugo as a trembling pup during thunderstorms. Hugo curled beside her after heartbreak. Hugo bounding through the park the day she met Lucas. He had always been there. And now, he needed her. She didn't hesitate. "We're going to the vet," she said, steady and certain. Her mother gasped audibly. "The wedding can wait," Grace added, rising with resolve, gathering her skirts in one hand and Hugo's leash in the other. She turned to Lucas, eyes shining. "I'm sorry. I can't leave him like this." Lucas didn't flinch. "You don't need to be sorry," he said quietly. "Hugo comes first." The guests watched in stunned silence as Grace, still in her wedding gown, led Hugo toward the car. Lucas was close behind, dialing the emergency vet. Her father remained to explain to the minister. Grace's entire focus was on Hugo, the companion who had loved her unconditionally for 13 years. His breathing was shallow, but he leaned into her, trusting her completely. The car sped toward the clinic. In the back seat, Grace cradled Hugo's head in her lap, her lace gown rumpled and smeared with fur and worry. Each breath he took seemed like a fragile countdown. Lucas glanced back at them repeatedly, his knuckles white around the steering wheel. "We're almost there," he said softly, though tension sharpened his voice. Grace brushed away a tear, her fingers running gently along Hugo's muzzle. "I should be known," she whispered. "He's been off all week. I thought it was the wedding chaos." Lucas didn't waver. "You couldn't have known," he said gently. "You're here now. That's what matters." The vet clinic came into view, glowing under soft exterior lights. Dr. Peterson, Hugo's vet for years, was already waiting. As they pulled up, he opened the door and helped them inside. Grace carried Hugo herself, her gown dragging behind her, forgotten. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and pine, clean, but strangely comforting. Dr. Peterson guided Hugo to the exam table, working with quiet urgency while Grace kept her hand on his side. Lucas wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Every second felt suspended. Finally, Dr. Peterson looked up, his face heavy with sympathy. "Sorry to interrupt. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It helps more than you know." Now, back to the story. "Hugo is in advanced heart failure," Dr. Peterson said softly. "The stress of today made it worse. We can manage the symptoms with medication, but it's a matter of months." The room spun. Grace clutched Lucas' hand, her grip turning bone white. "Is he in pain?" she whispered. Dr. Peterson gently shook his head. "No. But stopping you at the aisle, that was his way of telling you he needed help." Grace's tears fell freely now. She leaned down, forehead against Hugo's once more, his warmth grounding her even in this storm. "I'm so sorry," she breathed. "I'm so sorry, buddy." Beside her, Lucas stood steady, silent strength in the chaos. "What's the next step?" Doc, Lucas asked, voice calm but firm. How do we keep him comfortable? Doctor. Peterson began outlining the treatment plan, his words careful and measured, but Grace barely heard him. Her mind was a whirl of emotions. Her wedding, the guests, her parents, all of it seemed distant now, like echoes from someone else's life. She turned to Lucas, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. I need to stay with him, she said, without hesitation. Lucas didn't miss a beat. Then we stay, he said, squeezing her hand with silent reassurance. Before she could say another word, the clinic door creaked open. Grace, her father's voice filled the small room. He stepped inside, followed closely by her mother, the minister, and Sophie, her maid of honor. We thought you might need some support, her father said, his usual strong posture softening as his eyes landed on Hugo. Her mother, ever composed, was already blotting her eyes with a tissue, emotion breaking through. Sophie stepped forward, phone in hand, her expression gentle but determined. The guests understand, she said, but maybe we don't have to cancel the wedding. Grace blinked, startled. What do you mean? She asked quietly. The minister offered a kind smile. If you're willing, he said, we can hold the ceremony right here, with Hugo by your side. Grace's throat tightened, emotion rising fast. She looked to Lucas, searching his face for any doubt. It's not the wedding we imagined, he said softly, eyes locked with hers. But it feels right. A tearful laugh escaped her lips, the weight of the day pressing into her chest. She nodded, gripping his hand tighter. Let's do it. Within the hour, the clinic transformed into an impromptu wedding chapel. There were no floral arches or aisle runners, but the room glowed with something far more meaningful. Sophie helped adjust Grace's dress and veil, smoothing the fabric with care. Lucas straightened his tux as best he could, still wrinkled from the chaos. To Grace, he looked perfect. The minister took his place, and Hugo lay at their feet, tail wagging gently as if he understood the moment. As Grace and Lucas exchanged vows, hands clasped tightly, Grace felt a deep, steady certainty. This wasn't the wedding they had planned, but with the people they loved, and Hugo by their side, it was somehow more sacred. When the minister finally declared them husband and wife, Hugo let out a quiet, approving woof. The sound drew both laughter and tears. That night, instead of a grand reception beneath glittering lights, Grace and Lucas sat on the floor of their apartment, still in their wedding clothes, fingers laced in the soft glow of the living room. Between them lay Hugo, his head in Grace's lap, breathing slow and content. The warmth of his body grounded them. Takeout containers were scattered around them, Chinese food, their favorite. The aroma of soy sauce and noodles filled the room, wrapping around them like a memory. Every bite felt like a celebration, not of the wedding that didn't happen, but of the one that did, the one that mattered. Lucas turned to her, love etched into every line of his face. This wasn't the perfect wedding, he said with a quiet smile, but it was perfect for us. Grace looked down at Hugo, running her fingers gently through his fur. Because of him, she whispered, he reminded us what love really means. The months that followed were a bittersweet blend of joy and sorrow. The treatment gave them time Hugo filled with soft barks, gentle tail wags, and walks in the same park, where it all began. On good days, he was his old self, trotting beside Grace, chasing shadows, curling up next to Lucas. But there were hard days, too. Some mornings, he struggled to rise. On those days, Grace and Lucas slowed everything down, staying close, adapting, loving harder. One quiet winter night, Grace sat with Hugo's head resting in her lap, his warmth still strong. In the kitchen, Lucas prepared something hot, the kettle whistling softly. You've been the best boy, Hugo, she whispered. The very best. Moments later, Lucas appeared with two steaming mugs in hand. He paused at the doorway, taking in the scene before settling beside her. How's he doing? He asked, voice low. Grace exhaled, brushing her fingers over Hugo's ears. He's tired, she said gently, but he's here. That's what matters. Lucas wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pressing a kiss to her temple. He's a fighter, he murmured, just like you. His words landed in her chest, bittersweet and true. As winter gave way to spring, the good days became fewer, the balance shifted, and even Hugo seemed to understand. Then one morning, beneath a sky so clear it felt like a blessing, Hugo let them know it was time. They spent the day outside in the backyard, the trees blooming around them, the breeze soft and kind. Hugo lay on a blanket in the sun, surrounded by love. They fed him all his favorite treats. They whispered every thank you they could think of. They held him close, their hands on his fur, their voices the last thing he heard as he drifted peacefully into sleep. That evening, the house felt impossibly still. Grace sat at the kitchen table, staring at Hugo's empty bed. The silence wrapped around her like a shadow. Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her once again. You gave him a life full of love, Grace, he said softly. He always knew how much he meant to you. Grace nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. He taught me so much, she whispered, voice thick with grief. About loyalty, about love. I miss him so much. Lucas didn't speak. He only squeezed her hand, anchoring her with quiet understanding. No hollow reassurances, just presence. In the weeks that followed, they honored Hugo not just in words, but in the way they lived. They laughed at memories of his mischief, spoke his name often, and placed his worn collar gently on the shelf by the door, a quiet reminder of the love that had shaped their lives. His presence lingered in the way Grace hesitated at the kitchen door, where he used to wait, in the pause before Lucas sat down, still expecting to feel Hugo's weight lean against him, in the gentle emptiness of a house once filled with soft pause and quiet devotion. One afternoon, as Grace sorted through old photos, her fingers paused on one from the wedding. It captured a single, tender moment, she and Lucas exchanging vows, both gazing down at Hugo, who lay quietly at their feet, watching them with calm, loving eyes. Do you think he knew? She asked, brushing her fingers over the image. Lucas studied the photo, then turned to her. He knew exactly what he was doing, he said softly. He reminded us what mattered most. Months later, on a quiet, rainy afternoon, Grace and Lucas found themselves walking the familiar halls of the shelter, the very one where Grace had first met Hugo. The air was thick with the smell of clean straw and soft rain. Around them, the quiet rustle of dogs shifting in their kennels echoed like whispers of possibility. Grace wasn't there to replace Hugo. No dog could ever fill that space. But there was an ache, an open space in her heart that no longer felt like pain. It felt like readiness. As they walked past rows of hopeful eyes and wagging tails, she felt each gaze reach out. Every dog seemed to ask the same unspoken question, will you see me? And then, at the far end of the row, she saw him. An older golden retriever lay curled on a threadbare blanket. His fur was soft gold, streaked with silver around his muzzle. His eyes, deep, quiet, knowing, met hers without hesitation. He didn't bark or stand. He simply lifted his head, and looked at her as if he'd been waiting. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, Grace felt it. That same unexplainable connection she'd felt years ago with Hugo. A soul-level recognition. This is him, she breathed, emotion catching in her throat. He's the one. Lucas knelt beside her, reaching toward the kennel bars. The dog, his name was Lucky, according to the tag, let out a long, contented sigh as Lucas gently scratched behind his ears. His tail gave a slow, deliberate wag. No fear, no resistance, just trust. Lucas smiled, eyes soft. Welcome to the family, buddy. That night, as rain tapped gently against the windows, Lucky curled up in Hugo's old bed, claiming the space as if he'd always belonged there. Grace sat beside him, stroking his fur, her heart fuller than she thought possible. We're going to give you the best life, Lucky, she whispered. Because love like Hugo's, it was never meant to be kept. It was meant to be shared. Through Lucky, they rediscovered laughter, healing, and the quiet joy of coming home to unconditional love. Every year on their anniversary, Grace and Lucas returned to the shelter, not just to remember, but to give back. They brought blankets, toys, and time, especially for the older dogs so often overlooked. It became their tradition, their tribute, their way of carrying Hugo's legacy forward. Because Hugo had taught them something few ever learn: love isn't measured by how long it lasts, it's measured by how deeply you feel it. And as Lucky slept soundly beside them, his breathing slow, steady, and safe, they knew Hugo's final gift was this. He had shown them that even in heartbreak, the heart always has room to love again. Did this story move you? Did Lucky's arrival touch your heart? Let us know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us share more stories like this, because love always finds its way back. Thank you so much for listening. See you in the next video, and until then, take care.